Hey, what's up everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 13, and this episode is on B.B. King. Now, I for one do not agree that B.B. King is an unsung artist, because B.B. King is a true legend. You know, a legend that literally put blues on the map and has made blues known all over the world. But I know that Unsung does this because they did it a few seasons ago with James Brown, that they want to celebrate black music and also black excellence. So even though they're not unsung artists, they were artists that did leave a major imprint on black music and black culture. So they pay homage to them by doing an unsung episode on them. But definitely B.B. King definitely, you know, struggled, and he fought hard. And, you know, they even said that him being the king of the blues, it's not easy for a black man to be a king of nothing without some tragedy. So I thought that was really deep. And definitely him and Lucille have left an imprint on all of our lives, you know. And Lucille was that woman that never left his side. So you know, and they had the likes of, you know, Rod Bland, who was his godson and also the son of another blues legend, Bobby Bland. He was also doing commentary on this episode. Buddy Guy, you know, Bobby Rush. You know, it was just great that a lot of these, you know, soulful blues artists were not only paying homage to him, but really understood him and really understood, you know, who he was as a man and who he was as an artist. You know, and the thing about B.B. King that even stands out for me is his method of playing. Like, he just had a tone and timbre for playing the guitar like I've never heard. It's like he can make the guitar sing. And they said that, look, the way he was able to make that happen was with his fingers and with his heart. He played with his soul when he played with Lucille. And him and Lucille, when they got together, they made magic happen. And, you know, and he had a 70-year career. So definitely he toured nonstop, but he dealt with but you know, on his fight to make blues mainstream, he really had some hard times. I mean, he, you know, dealt with racism and, you know, dealt with that others were being pushed ahead before him when he was one of the pioneers, but then he was being left behind while others who were in the game because of him were getting better shine than him. So he had to deal with that as well. But you know, he was born in 1925 in the Mississippi Delta. You know, his full name was Riley B. King. He was born on a cotton plantation. You know, his mom had died at the age of 9. His grandmother had died 5 years later. So by the time he was 13, he was literally on his own. And I definitely can see I can see that his situation was somewhat relatable to how Isaac Hayes grew up. You know, they grew up poor and literally, you know, they had intense hardship. And, you know, he picked cotton daily, and they said that he picked cotton from 4 a.m. In the morning to 7 p.m. at night. You know, daily with no days off. You know, that's working. You know, and on top of it, he wasn't even being paid anything. Like, he would plow all day for $2. So it's like he was literally working for like 22 cents an hour, literally. And, you know, during that time, you know, he came face to face with racism. You know, he knew friends that were being lynched. You know, and, you know, he dealt with a lot of extreme hardships at an early age, being a young black man. And it was actually a pastor who had taught him some chords on the guitar. And who knew that that pastor teaching him those chords was going to take him to the legacy that we now know him for. And they said that, you know, as a kid he was too young, so he couldn't get into, like, you know, the juke joints or the taverns. So he would kind of like look outside and would be looking through the windows, but be listening to the music and be practicing, you know, what he was hearing. When he was in his teens, he joined, you know, the famous St. John Singers. You know, that's where he, you know, definitely learned gospel and the blues, because I said, like, gospel gave birth to the blues. But he said that, you know, how he, like, he said that when he would do gospel, you know, he try to get people to put money in the hat. They won't put no money in it. But when he sung blues, people started putting money in it. So he's like, ding, okay, I guess I got something going on here. And that's what he did with that. And I thought that was pretty cool. How he figured out that, yeah, blues was where the money was at. And he also saw that blues was going to be his escape from the dire world of hardship and distress that he was born into. And also they mentioned that, you know, about his first wife, Martha. They were like, you know, teenage sweethearts. They got married in 1944, and they actually divorced after 8 years because you know, of course, being an artist, you know, you're away from your family, you're constantly touring, and he toured a lot. Like, he would tour sometimes 300 days out of the year, you know, and we get 365 days, so most of the time he was always on the road, and of course on the road there are a lot of temptations. But later on he was saying that, hey, if you're going to be into this business, it's probably best you stay single, because it does dissolve relationships, because your career and your audience, you know, they call a lot of you, and to be in that realm, you know, sometimes being in a relationship can actually break down, you know, actually being in a relationship can actually sour due to the pressures of the business. That's what I meant to say. You know, by this time he had, like, moved to Memphis and began to start to make a name for himself. He had, like, songs like, you know, Fingers and Soul, and you know, he ends up setting up a studio in the Black YMCA, and that's where he did 3 O'Clock Blues, you know, which was definitely a special track. And it spent 5 weeks it spent 5 weeks #1 on the R&B charts. So definitely that was definitely him making his mark. And let's see. You know, he was also one of the first blue artists who kind of created his own original band. You know, R&B and blues. You know, he definitely, you know, created a band, and, you know, they were clean and sharp. And then also they talk about, you know, him not only being a ladies' man, but then him also being a father. I think he ended up having 15 children, and supposedly they say some of them weren't actually his, but, you know, he loved children, and he definitely took care of all his kids the best way he could. I mean, he made sure they were all financially taken care of. But then again, it's like, you know, the road, him and Lucille, they were always on a mission. And one of his daughters, Shirley King, she was one of the people that was commentating on this episode as well. But the thing about it, they talked about how he did love the women, but he was a guy that was always on the move. So, like, in the 40s and 50s, he definitely was working the Chitlin circuit, working 300 dates a year, because, you know, they even talked about that, you know, working that many days, hell, you could try to work 400 if they existed, because that was the only way you made enough money to support yourself. Because there were some gigs where you didn't make any money or very little money, so you needed to keep going from gig to gig to gig in order to earn a living. and he practically lived on the road. And of course, he dealt with segregation and, you know, also being ripped off by promoters who wouldn't pay him. So he dealt with a lot. And then also, you know, he even had the song, you know, Every Day I Have the Blues, because it was kind of like, you know, the same thing that can make you happy could also be the same thing that can make you cry. So, you know, you can have the blues any day of the week. And then he also began to see like artists like Chuck Berry and Little Richard. They were, you know, crossing over into mainstream rock, but he was not getting that crossover appeal, and he wasn't getting and he felt that the blues genre was not getting the respect that it deserved, because he would get on some of these national tours with Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and all of that, and they talked about that when he would perform, the audience would boo him, and this was a black audience at that. So this was definitely traumatic for him, and it even hurt me to hear it. That, you know, here it is, he's a man that came from the Mississippi Delta, where he couldn't even drink from the same fountain as a white man, so he was already rejected by white people. But then to be rejected by your own, it was like he felt like he was being black twice. And he said he cried on stage because it really hurt him, you know, and that had to be traumatic and demoralizing. And it goes to show that this is something that we have to stop doing as a black community. We have to stop throwing away our gems. As soon as we get like a new gem as far as music, we throw away the other ones like they don't matter. Blues is still relevant. R&B is still relevant. Jazz is still relevant. These gave birth. If it wasn't for these genres, hip-hop and rap and trap wouldn't even fucking exist. So, excuse my language, but I'm being real right now. So at the end of the day, we as a people need to stop throwing away our gems, and because honestly, all of these genres need to be mainstream. I mean, blues. I mean, the blues shouldn't end with BB. You know, there should still be a lane where future blues artists can come and they can actually be just as successful, if not more successful than BB. And the same thing with other genres of music. It's like once we find a genre that's popular, we forget the others. No, you know, these genres are still relevant. These genres still have current artists who are trying to express themselves through these genres. Like we have future jazz artists, future R&B artists. You know, these artists need to actually have, you know, fair representation by us, but also by the mainstream as well. So I just wanted to tap onto that. So they talked about like in the 60s, he was at a crossroads because he was still working the Chitlin circuit and was making very little to no money. Blues was not getting the respect that it deserved, because, you know, around the 60s, you pretty much had the Motown sound, and pretty much as I was saying, like the blues was the foundation of black music, and like, you know, he also has this song, you know, How Blue Can You Get, that he did in '64, where he's like, I gave you 7 children and now you want to give them back. Pretty much a whole thing, like, you know, here it is, I blessed you, but now you're giving it back like it doesn't mean anything to you. Like, I gave you something precious and yet you're giving it back. So I thought that was like, you know, that was real, and it spoke true to who he was and what he was feeling at that time. You know, and that song, How Blue Can You Get, was on the 1965 Live at the Regal album. You know, and we see from that he started to get attention from some of these, you know, mainstream, you know, rock artists like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, who were taking some of his songs and were becoming big successes on their own, but yet he was still on the Chitlin circuit struggling. And then they talked about him having a gambling addiction, him owing the IRS, and then having another marriage dissolve. But then his fortunes began to change later on within the late '60s because his manager Sid Seidenberg um, began to introduce BB King to a new generation of young people. Now, in the mid '60s was like the sexual revolution and the flower generation. So this was a generation that was looking for music of expression, music of feeling, music of magic, and blues is all of that. And they talked about when he actually performed at this concert. He saw all these white hippies there, and he was kind of like, "Are you sure we're in the right place here?" And they were like, "Yeah, you are." And they immediately gravitated to him like he was a rock star, and it broke him down. And he said that he was so emotional because he never. It was the first time he finally felt the respect that he was long overdue as an artist. And then from that point on, his career started to pick up. He ended up winning a Grammy and started touring, and he had a song "Why I Sing the Blues," which was a true testament to who he was and why he sang the blues and why the blues was so important to him. And then his audience expanded too, from rock fans and R&B fans, and then also one of his the song that he won a Grammy for was "The Thrill Is Gone," which is definitely one of his songs today that he's mostly known for. So people who never heard blues, they know "The Thrill Is Gone." Because "The Thrill Is Gone" has been in movies, it's been in commercials. It's a song that's definitely has, it's definitely lasted the test of time. And it was relatable across the board because eventually something that was good, after a while, is not so good. The thrill is gone. So it was a song that was definitely relatable. But it went 15. It went to number 15 on the pop charts. It won him a Grammy, and he ended up going on tour opening for the Rolling Stones. And then they also talked about something that I thought was very amazing. Of just like Johnny Cash, he will perform for the inmates in jail. He did like over 50 free concerts, at different prisons. And he said that, look, performing for a prison is a tough crowd, and if you bad, they will let you know. Yeah, we kind of saw a glimpse of that when they did that scene in Fighting Temptations when they sung at the jail. So yeah, they a tough crowd, but he said that they love BB and they always gravitated towards him. He even had this song. He even did an album live from Cook County Jail, and it went number one in 1970. It went number one. I don't know if it might have been 1970, but if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But they also talk about how the 1970s came around, and then you had disco and funk pretending to take precedence in black music, and blues started to fall again, and he pretty much slumped, and he kind of was still battling issues with gambling because he had a showcase, I think, in Vegas, and he was gambling a lot, and but then from that point, he ended up getting up with the Crusaders, and it completely got him out of that realm, and decided that, look, we need to keep moving this forward. And right now the blues ain't popular on the radio, but I'm gonna become a global ambassador of the blues, and I'm gonna travel the world doing the blues, and let it be known that the blues will not die and the blues will not be forgotten. And definitely that actually saved him, and it actually kept him going through that decade when he wasn't getting as much airplay or much recognition that he deserved, but he still kept going, as an artist and as a person. And as a matter of fact, it actually opened doors for him, because in the 80s, I remember when he was on the Cosby Show. that was like my first time ever seeing BB King as a kid, was when I saw him on the Cosby Show, and I immediately gravitated towards him because here was this big guy, and he had Lucille with him, and the man could play. And I was literally like, and then my mother was educating me about him too at the time, so I was like, wow, I really like this guy. But another thing that I remember from BB King, one of my favorite movies is this movie called Heart and Soul with Robert Downey Jr. He was in the movie, you know, at the time of his birth, there were 4 people who died in this bus accident, and these 4 people, their souls entered into him. So here it is, he grew up with these ghosts around him. And these ghosts, the reason why they were trapped there was because they all had something to accomplish before their souls were able to go to heaven. One of the guys, his mission was to actually sing for a live audience, because he was a great singer, but because he was so scared, he would always run away. So there was a scene where, you know, the ghost enters into Robert Downey Jr. and he sings the national anthem. And then we see BB King, who was himself in the movie. He's so moved by this guy's voice that he gets behind him and plays the national anthem on Lucille. And I saw this film in the movies when I was a little boy. That scene was the most memorable scene for me in the entire movie. Even though it was a great movie and it's a classic, it's a movie I love, but that was my favorite scene when BB King came out and started playing the Star Spangled Banner with him, and then afterwards, you know, he went to playing The Thrill Is Gone, and that's when they arrested Robert Downey Jr. So I thought that was pretty cool because he actually stormed BB King's concert. But BB is a lover of the music, and when you see this guy singing, you know, the Star Spangled Banner, he gets behind him and starts playing along with him. I thought that was pretty cool. And also, he had made an appearance on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I definitely remember that episode, and he was on there as well. And also, he also lent his name and likeness to the BB King clubs in Memphis, as well as, you know, they went from Louisiana and many other places. So he made sure that not only that the blues were not going to die, but who he was as a man and his legacy was not going to die either. And he said that, you know, one thing I can say is that money didn't change him. Money made him better. And that's why I have nothing but the utmost respect for BB King, because even though he became financially successful, he actually went back to his hometown in the Mississippi Delta, you know, and I think it's Indianola, I believe. And he did a concert there for free. And he said that, you know, like one of his band members was kind of saying, like, why are we performing here, man? The daggone grass is growing in the stage. Really? You gonna perform for these people? And King kind of said, like, let me tell you something, son. This is my home. This is where I came from. I'm no different than any of these people. I'm just like them. The only difference is I got a little bit of money. And if you're making fun of them, you're making fun of me. Shut him right down. And I was like, wow, just goes to show you, no matter how far he came or how much success he had, he never forgot who he was. He was still that man from the Mississippi Delta, and he paid homage to where he came from and wasn't ashamed of who he was and where he came from. But it drove him to become the man that he was, and he definitely came back and paid homage to his community. And that, to me, was very rewarding and very inspirational. You know, he's, you know, won a Lifetime Achievement Grammy. He got a Presidential Medal of Freedom, you know, that was given to him by the president at the time, Bill Clinton. He also has a museum, you know, in Indianola. And he had passed away in 2015, but even as of now, you know, his legacy, and he's pretty much said, he told everybody that when I die, don't let the blues die. Keep the blues alive, because the blues is one of the founding genres of black music, and we can't allow it to go away. You know, we had some of the best that came out of the blues, out out of the blues genre. And that's definitely a genre that we have to continue to, embrace, but a genre that we have to continue to nurture and to uphold. And Rod Bland was definitely, he's a phenomenal drummer too. But that was his godson, and also I mentioned before, the son of Bobby Bland, another great, legend in blues music. And he was talking about that, he really knew how much B.B. King touched people was at that funeral. There were thousands upon thousands, because I think they went the funeral procession went from, I think, from Memphis to Indianola, and normally I think it was like a 2-hour trip. It was actually 7 hours because there were so many people, and he touched so many, even myself included. So definitely, he's a true legend, and he's a legend that is definitely gonna spark so many great artists that are gonna come in the future. So that's what I have, y'all. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you get notifications every time I drop a video. Also, follow me on all of my social platforms. I have them all listed in the description box. Also, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I'll be back with the next episode of Unsung. So until next time, everybody, take care.